It was supposed to be the quiet life. Samantha Ellis had envisioned something peaceful when she left her chaotic tech job in Seattle. She dreamed of slowing down, reconnecting with her roots, and helping her mom, Margaret, run the family farm in rural Oregon. No more endless meetings, no more deadlines pressing down on her chest like a vice, just fresh air, the sound of wind rustling through the trees, and the soft nicker of horses. But that's not what she got. It started innocently enough. A dull morning like any other. Samantha stood at the kitchen counter, coffee in hand, staring out of the window as the sun rose over the distant hills. The morning light kissed the tops of the trees, and the fields stretched out before her like a watercolor painting. Life, she thought, was finally getting back to normal. Then she heard the sound, a metallic clink, followed by a soft scraping. Confused, Samantha set her mug down and pulled on her boots. She stepped out onto the porch and walked toward the barn. At first, it didn't seem like much, just a normal day on the farm. But when she reached the barn door, her heart skipped a beat. There was Luna, her black mare. Luna, the one who always seemed to get into trouble, standing calmly in front of the stall with the latch halfway open. The first time it happened, Samantha had chalked it up to a fluke. Maybe Luna had bumped into it. Maybe the latch wasn't fastened properly the night before. But when it happened again, the next morning, and the next, Samantha began to wonder. The mare had always been clever, but this was something else. Luna wasn't just getting out. She was figuring out how. Samantha stood at the entrance of the barn, staring at the mare. Luna's deep, intelligent eyes locked onto hers, almost as if she were waiting for her next move. A burst of laughter escaped Samantha's lips, a mix of disbelief and amusement. "What are you up to now?" Luna flicked her ears back and without warning used her mouth to slide the latch open completely. With a soft click, the door swung wide, and Luna walked out, as though she'd just done a routine trick for a crowd. But there was no crowd. Not yet. Samantha stood frozen for a moment, watching the horse. It wasn't just the lock that was impressive. It was the way Luna moved. Graceful, deliberate, and calm. It was like the horse had done it 1,000 times before. "What are you doing?" Samantha murmured, slowly stepping forward. The idea that Luna was doing this on purpose didn't sit well with her. And yet, as strange as it was, there was something undeniably clever about it. Samantha quickly checked the rest of the barn, noticing other stalls had been tampered with. Another lock was slightly askew. A feed room door cracked open. For a brief moment, she thought about how ridiculous it all seemed. A horse, picking locks, breaking out of her stall like a master escape artist. It was absurd. And yet, it was happening. Frustrated, Samantha picked up her phone and filmed a short clip of Luna standing proudly by the open stall door. "This horse is smarter than my coworkers," she typed as the caption. It was supposed to be a joke, just a fun little video she could share with friends. But when she uploaded it to her social media account, something unexpected happened. The video didn't just get a few likes. It went viral. In the spans of a few hours, Samantha's phone buzzed relentlessly. Friends and family texted her. News outlets started calling. People wanted to know about the horse that could pick locks. A strange curiosity seemed to blossom overnight. Samantha was suddenly thrust into the spotlight, and the last thing she wanted was more attention. But Luna thrived under it. The videos continued, each more impressive than the last. More tricks, more escapes, and more people tuning in. By the end of the first week, Luna had become a local celebrity. As the days passed, the farm became a spectacle. People began showing up, driving miles to get a glimpse of the horse that had the internet buzzing. Tour buses, cameras flashing, and the ever-present hum of drones above. It was surreal. Samantha never expected that moving to the farm would bring her life to this point. She never imagined that Luna would go from being just another horse in the paddock to a viral sensation. And yet, here they were, the world watching as this brilliant, mischievous mare did her thing. But as the crowd grew, Samantha's unease began to swell. It wasn't just the media frenzy. It wasn't the constant swarm of tourists. It was Luna. The more attention the mare received, the more withdrawn she became. The spark in her eyes seemed to dim, and she started refusing food, her usual playful demeanor replaced by a kind of guarded loneliness. Samantha stood in the barn, watching Luna in the dim light. She felt a pang of guilt. Had she turned her beloved mare into nothing more than a circus act? Was it worth it? Luna's eyes met hers again, but this time there was no playful mischief. Just a quiet resignation. A thought crossed Samantha's mind. What have I done? The fame, the attention, it was all so temporary. But Luna, the horse who had brought this storm upon them, was more than just a viral sensation. Samantha knew that now, but did she know how to protect her? That was the question. Samantha Ellis had never planned to leave the hustle of Seattle for rural Oregon, but after 3 years of burnout in the tech industry, her mind and body were desperate for a change. The constant grind of deadlines, meetings, and the pressure to stay ahead had drained her. So, when her mother, Margaret, called and asked for help on the family farm, Samantha jumped at the opportunity. Her mom had always run the farm with a strong but steady hand, but the years were starting to take a toll. Margaret, now in her early 60s, had never been one to ask for help. But Samantha could hear the exhaustion in her voice that last time they spoke. The decision was easy, but the reality of it hit Samantha harder than she had expected. The small farm sat on acres of land surrounded by tall, whispering pines and endless fields. It was a peaceful place, the kind of place you could lose yourself in. The air was fresher here, the sound of birds, a constant backdrop, and the view from the porch in the morning was something out of a dream. But as Samantha drove up to the farm, the weight of her decision settled in her chest. Her once bustling tech life, filled with energy and constant stimulation, felt miles away. Here, it was just the hum of crickets, the occasional moo of cows, and the rustling of leaves in the wind. The silence was deafening at times. When she arrived, her mom was standing on the porch, smiling, but with a hint of weariness in her eyes. Margaret was shorter than Samantha remembered, her once lush hair now graying at the temples. But her smile was the same, warm and welcoming, the kind of smile that could erase 1,000 worries. You're here," Margaret said, pulling her daughter into a tight hug. "Welcome home, Sammy." Samantha smiled, but the tension in her shoulders didn't quite leave. She hadn't realized how much she had missed the farm, how much she had missed her mom, but there was a different kind of weight on her now. A weight of responsibility, of expectation. She wasn't just coming home to visit. She was here to stay, to help Margaret, to take on a life she had never truly known. The first few weeks were a blur. Samantha woke early, helped with feeding the animals, cleaned out the stalls, and did everything she could to keep the farm running smoothly. The work wasn't hard, but it was grueling in its own way. There was something so relentless about farm life, something that kept you going even when you were exhausted. It was all consuming, but in a way, it was exactly what she needed. There were days when she rose, felt the pressure of her past life, the emails she would have sent, the clients she would have spoken with, the deadlines that would have loomed over her. But slowly, it started to fade. The longer she stayed on the farm, the more she started to appreciate the simplicity of it all. The work was honest, and the rewards, though small, were satisfying in ways that her tech job never had been. One of the first animals Samantha grew close to was Luna, the black mare who had always been a bit of a mystery. She had been raised on the farm, but for some reason, she had always been more aloof than the other horses. Luna was quiet, observant, and always kept to herself. Samantha had been drawn to her from the moment they met, something about Luna's presence resonating with her. It wasn't just the horse's sleek, jet-black coat or the sharp, intelligent look in her eyes. There was something more, something Samantha couldn't quite explain. And then, one day, It happened. Samantha was cleaning the stalls when she noticed Luna standing near the door, her ears twitching as though listening for something. Samantha paused, watching the horse carefully. She had seen Luna do this before, but it was never for long. Just little moments of quiet observation before the mare would wander off to graze. But this time, something was different. Luna was standing at the door, not moving, almost as if she were waiting. Curious, Samantha stepped closer to the stall. She reached out to gently stroke the mare's sleek neck when she saw it. The latch on the door, which had always been secure, was now hanging open. Samantha's heart skipped a beat. She took a step back, her hands still lingering in the air. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Had Luna figured out how to open the latch? She watched as Luna nudged the door with her nose, gently pushing it further open. The mare then stepped outside, as calm and collected as ever, as if she were going for a walk. Samantha was stunned. She didn't know whether to laugh or to be terrified. The idea of a horse picking locks seemed too absurd to be true. Yet there Luna was, proving her wrong. "What the hell?" Samantha muttered under her breath. But Luna wasn't done. The next few days were a whirlwind of discovery. Samantha soon realized that Luna had been escaping on purpose, not by accident. She would unlock her stall, let herself out, and sometimes even open the other doors in the barn. It wasn't just the stall she was getting out of. She was actively freeing the other horses. At first, Samantha thought it was a coincidence. But the more she watched, the more it became clear. Yeah, Luna was a master escape artist. At first, Samantha found it funny. She laughed at the absurdity of it all. "A horse who can pick locks," she said to her mom, who raised an eyebrow but shrugged, clearly amused. But the amusement quickly wore off. The farm wasn't secure anymore. If Luna could unlock the stalls, who knew what else she could do? The last thing Samantha wanted was for her mother's farm to turn into some kind of circus act, attracting tourists who wanted to see the magical horse. But what could she do? She couldn't exactly stop Luna from doing what she was born to do, and that was when it happened. One evening, after the video went viral, everything changed. The simple life Samantha had imagined for herself, helping out on the farm, taking things slow, it was slipping away faster than she could keep up. Samantha stood at the barn door, watching Luna as she idly grazed in the field. The morning sun cast long shadows across the paddocks, the golden light spilling over the distant hills. It was a peaceful scene, the kind Samantha had imagined when she moved back to the farm. Yet, as she watched the black mare's sleek figure, her mind kept drifting back to the strange behavior she had witnessed over the past week. Luna had always been a bit of an enigma. She wasn't like the other horses, always more reserved, more mysterious. While the other animals happily trotted to the gates for food and attention, Luna often hung back, observing everything with a quiet, knowing gaze. But now, there was something deeper to her behavior. Luna wasn't just another horse. She was becoming something else, entirely. The first time Samantha realized Luna wasn't just a regular horse was when she found the stall door open one morning. Luna had been inside, but the latch, which had always been secure before, was completely undone. At first, Samantha chalked it up to a mistake. Maybe the door hadn't been latched properly the night before. But when it happened again, and the next day, and the next, she knew something was up. Luna didn't just open the door. She did it with precision, with intention, as if she knew exactly what she was doing. Samantha had become increasingly curious. Every time she checked, Luna was there, calm, cool, and collected, standing near an open stall door, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Over the next few days, Samantha witnessed Luna's escape artist skills in action. It wasn't just the stalls. Luna had started letting herself out of the feed room too. Samantha had locked it up tight, but every time she checked, the door was ajar. And Luna? Standing there, her eyes gleaming with pride, as though she'd just completed an incredible feat. It was an uncanny display of intelligence and a Luna didn't just want to escape. She seemed to have figured out how to do it methodically. First, she would use her mouth to slide open the latch on her stall. Then, she'd nudge the door with her nose until it swung wide open. No chaos, no wild panic, just a calm, deliberate series of actions that had all the hallmarks of a well-thought-out plan. Samantha could hardly believe it. A horse, had become a master escape artist. It started as a funny little quirk, a few moments of amusement as Luna tested her boundaries. But soon, it became clear that the horse wasn't just escaping for the sake of it. It was as if Luna was trying to make a point. And whatever that point was, Samantha couldn't figure it out. One afternoon, Samantha decided to test it. She watched from the corner of the barn, peeking out from behind a stack of hay bales. The stall doors were all locked, but she had a feeling. Luna was pacing back and forth, her dark coat glistening in the late afternoon sun. Then, as if on cue, Luna approached her stall door. She sniffed at the latch for a moment, her nose brushing against the metal. Samantha's heart raced. Was it really happening again? Luna's mouth closed around the latch. It was slow at first, almost tentative, as if she were feeling her way around. But then, with surprising finesse, Luna pulled at the latch. The door clicked open, and with a quiet swish of her tail, Luna walked out of her stall as if she were simply strolling across the pasture. Samantha's eyes widened in disbelief. There was no doubt about it now. This wasn't an accident. Luna had done this on purpose, and she wasn't just escaping for herself. She was setting in the stage for something bigger. The next day, Samantha uploaded a short video of the whole thing. The caption read, "This horse is smarter than my coworkers." It was meant to be lighthearted, a funny little observation that she could share with her friends. She didn't expect much to come from it. But within hours, things escalated beyond her control. The video exploded on social media. It was shared, commented on, and reposted thousands of times. People were amazed. The video of Luna effortlessly opening her stall door quickly became a viral sensation. News outlets picked up the story. Media personalities began calling, wanting to know more about the escape artist horse. They were fascinated by the horse's incredible intelligence, how she had figured out how to unlock her stall, open the feed room, and roam freely at will. The calls kept coming. Samantha found herself talking to reporters, responding to emails, and answering questions she hadn't been prepared for. It felt like the calm, quiet farm she had envisioned was slipping further away with every passing minute. And it didn't stop there. Tourists began showing up at the farm, eager to catch a glimpse of the now famous mare. They drove up from miles away, snapping pictures and asking if they could see the horse who could unlock doors. Samantha couldn't believe it. She was living in a storybook, but it was one that was quickly getting out of hand. The farm had become a spectacle. The peaceful mornings Samantha had imagined, where she could sip coffee and breathe in the fresh air, were now replaced by the constant sound of car engines and the hum of drones overhead. People had come to see Luna, to witness the horse who could pick locks, and Luna, the mare that had once been calm, reserved, and private, now stood at the center of it all, the star of a show she never asked to be a part of. Samantha had always loved the farm, the animals, and the simplicity of the life she had hoped for, but now her quiet escape from the chaos of city life was beginning to feel more like a cage. The farm had become a zoo, and Luna, the clever mare, had unwittingly turned them all into part of the exhibit. But as the days passed, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Luna had become more withdrawn, less playful, less engaging. She had always been a horse of mystery, but now there was something different about her. She seemed distant, almost like she was retreating from the very things she had made possible. The fame, the cameras, the strangers. Samantha didn't know what to do. She had always prided herself on being a problem solver, but this was different. This wasn't a tech glitch or a software error. This was Luna, a horse that had become far more than she ever intended to be. And the question that lingered in Samantha's mind was the same one she kept asking herself over and over again. Had she turned her mother's farm into something it was never meant to be? The moment the video of Luna's lockpicking went live, Samantha had no idea what she was in for. What started as a quirky, offhand post, a simple video showcasing her clever mare's unexpected trick, quickly spiraled into something much larger, much more overwhelming. And it was a Saturday afternoon when the first signs of the viral storm started to appear. Samantha had posted the video of Luna unlocking her stall door, joking about how her horse was smarter than her tech colleagues. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious, just a fun, silly thing to share with her friends. A lighthearted break from the usual monotony of farm life. The first few likes came trickling in slowly, then more and more. By the time the evening rolled around, Samantha's phone had begun to buzz nonstop. Her notifications were a blur of likes, comments, and shares. Curious? She opened her social media app to find a flood of notifications from people she didn't even know. Luna's video had been shared far and wide. Samantha blinked in disbelief. It was happening. Her phone kept buzzing, now with messages from reporters, curious fans, and even a few celebrities. The viral sensation that was Luna had officially taken off. By the time she checked her phone the next morning, the video had garnered millions of views. Her inbox was filled with emails from media outlets, offering interviews and asking for more footage of the incredible horse. There were also messages from fans asking for updates on Luna's training and demanding more content of her escape artist antics. The curiosity surrounding Luna only seemed to grow with each passing hour. Samantha was taken aback. This was way beyond anything she had expected. The farm, her sanctuary from the digital world, had now become an object of fascination, and she couldn't help but feel a rising tide of unease. Luna's video wasn't just a hit, it was an internet phenomenon. Her phone didn't stop ringing. People from all over the country were reaching out, asking if they could visit the farm to meet the famous mare. It wasn't long before news outlets began calling too. Local TV stations, or national news networks, they all wanted a piece of the story. Samantha found herself scrambling to keep up, trying to manage the influx of requests, while also keeping up with the daily responsibilities of running a farm. The phone calls, the interviews, and the constant attention were wearing her thin. The farm, once a peaceful retreat, was now a tourist attraction. A few days later, the first tour bus rolled up the dirt road, filled with people eager to see the famous horse. Samantha could hear the laughter and excited chatter of the group as they spilled out of the vehicle and made their way toward the barn. The small farm, tucked away in rural Oregon, was now a destination. "Can we see the horse?" one of the visitors asked eagerly, holding up a camera. Samantha stood at the entrance to the barn, unsure of what to say. This wasn't how she had imagined life on the farm. It wasn't supposed to be this chaotic, this invasive. But here they were, crowds of strangers snapping photos and crowding around the paddocks, all for one thing: to see Luna. Luna stood near the back of the paddock, her deep black coat gleaming in the sun, her eyes scanning the crowd with a calm, knowing gaze. She was still the same horse, clever, reserved, mysterious. But there was something different about her now. The joy she once took in performing her little tricks seemed to have faded, replaced by a quiet, watchful distance. She no longer seemed to enjoy the attention as she once had. And that was what worried Samantha the most. The first few weeks of the farm, becoming a spectacle, were a blur. As news outlets picked up the story, Luna's fame only spread further. Headlines with catchy titles like "The Horse Who Outsmarts Humans" or "Luna, the Mare Who Can Unlock Doors" appeared across social media, adding to the frenzy. Samantha's quiet life was now completely engulfed by the spotlight. She went from being a private citizen to the owner of a viral animal sensation. The once serene farm became a spectacle. The traffic in front of the property increased day by day. People would stop by in their cars just to catch a glimpse of Luna. Some even parked their vehicles on the side of the road to take photos through the fence, as if the place were some kind of zoo. Samantha started getting calls about tours, requests for merchandise with Luna's face, and even an offer from a major news network to feature her and Luna on a national morning show. Everyone wanted a piece of the story, and for the first time, Samantha realized just how much Luna had captured the public's imagination. And the more attention they received, the more the farm became a zoo. Samantha noticed children climbing fences to get closer to the animals, and drones buzzing overhead, filming the horses from every angle. It wasn't just the usual farm visitors anymore. It was tourists, media crews, and fans, all eager to witness the horse who had unlocked her way into their hearts. The situation grew more uncomfortable with each passing day. Luna, who had once been so full of life, seemed to retreat further and further into herself. She no longer greeted Samantha with the same exuberance. She stopped eating as much, grew quieter, and spent more time pacing alone in her stall. The pressure of fame was taking a toll on her, and Samantha could see it in the mare's eyes. Luna wasn't just tired of the crowds. She seemed to be shutting down altogether. The reality of the situation was starting to hit Samantha hard. What had she done? Had she turned Luna, this intelligent, remarkable horse, into a spectacle for her own benefit? What had started as a lighthearted video was now a full-blown media circus, and it was wearing them both down. Well, in a quiet moment, one evening, after the last group of tourists had left and the sun had dipped below the horizon, Samantha stood by the fence, looking out over the field. Luna stood at the far side, her eyes reflecting the fading light. Samantha's heart ached. She had brought Luna into this. But was it worth it? The crowds would eventually go home, but what would be left for Luna? The fame was fleeting, but the damage to their lives, to the peaceful farm life Samantha had once dreamed of, felt permanent. She had to figure out how to take back control before it was too late. As the days blurred into each other, Samantha found herself losing track of time. The relentless buzz of her phone, the constant flow of visitors, and the endless media requests became part of the new normal. But the more the farm became a spectacle, the more Samantha started to feel the weight of the consequences. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion. It was the emotional toll it was taking on her, Luna, and the rest of the animals. The farm, once a quiet refuge in rural Oregon, had turned into an attraction, a place where curiosity outweighed the need for peace. Tourists came in droves, driving for miles to see the viral horse who could pick locks. People posted photos of Luna on social media, their excitement palpable as they took selfies with the horse, as if she were nothing more than a living prop for their own amusement. And Samantha had always believed that animals were partners, that they had the right to their space, their comfort, and their dignity. But now, Luna was a commodity. Her cleverness, which had once brought Samantha joy, was now being exploited. It didn't take long for the atmosphere to shift. What had once been a calm, respectful relationship between Samantha and the animals was now overshadowed by an ever-present crowd. At first, it was fun. It was amusing to watch Luna's tricks, to see her opening doors and stalls with the skill of a magician. The videos had gone viral, the media had gone wild, and the attention seemed like a harmless byproduct of Luna's innate intelligence. But the novelty began to wear off. The thrill of the viral moment had turned into a grueling circus, and the farm, which Samantha had hoped would offer her a fresh start, had become something she no longer recognized. It wasn't just the attention that had changed the dynamic. It was the stress it caused for Luna and the other animals. Horses, by nature, were sensitive creatures. They thrived on routine, on calmness, on the quiet connection with their caretakers. But as the farm became a spectacle, everything changed. The other horses, once content to wander the paddocks, now spent their days agitated and skittish. They stomped their hooves and whinnied nervously at the sounds of car engines revving outside the fence. Eh. Samantha noticed that they were no longer as docile. Their behavior had shifted, their anxiety growing with the noise and disruption that came with the influx of visitors. Luna, too, had changed. She was no longer the spirited, clever mare who had first drawn Samantha to her. She had become withdrawn, almost reclusive. She no longer came to Samantha when called, no longer met her gaze with that spark of mischief. Instead, she paced her stall at night, her movements tense, her body rigid with unease. Samantha watched all of this unfold with a growing sense of guilt. Had I done this to her? She wondered, feeling the weight of her decision pressed down on her chest. Had I made her a prisoner of her own fame? The breaking point came one afternoon, just a week after the latest batch of media coverage. A small crowd had gathered at the gates, eager to see the famous escape artist. Samantha had reluctantly agreed to allow a few people onto the property, figuring that a controlled environment would keep things manageable. But the moment the first group of tourists entered the gate, things quickly spiraled out of control. Children began climbing fences, pressing their faces to the bars of the paddocks to get a better view of Luna. Some of the adults were snapping pictures from every angle, blocking the horse's view and creating chaos. Luna stood at the far corner of the field, her tail flicking nervously, her eyes wide. Samantha could see the unease in the mare's every movement. She didn't want to be part of this. She didn't want to perform for these strangers. Yet there she was, the center of attention, surrounded by people who saw her not as a living, breathing being, but as a spectacle. Samantha's heart sank as she watched the scene unfold. She wanted to intervene, to ask the tourists to leave, to give Luna and the other horses the space they needed. But the media had already spread word that Luna would be performing for the crowd that afternoon, and it felt like all eyes were on her. She couldn't just send them away. Could she? That's when she noticed the drone overhead. A loud buzzing sound filled the air as a small drone hovered just above the paddocks, its camera zooming in on Luna as she nervously trotted away from the crowd. Samantha's stomach dropped. The drone flew lower, and Luna, startled by the noise, bolted toward the barn. The tourists gasped, their excitement reaching a fever pitch as the drone followed her every move. Samantha rushed to the fence, trying to calm the horse. "Luna!" she called, but the mare was already panicked, running in tight circles. Her usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by the fear of being chased, of being constantly observed, of being trapped in the very place that had once been her home. Luna finally stopped by the barn, her sides heaving with exhaustion. She stood there, trembling, refusing to move any further. Samantha could see the stress in her eyes, the weariness that had come from too much attention, too much exposure. She knew then that things had gone too far. That evening, Samantha locked herself in the barn, sitting quietly on a bale of hay, staring out at the field. The silence was deafening. Her phone buzzed again with another message, but she didn't pick it up. She didn't care anymore. The farm was no longer a sanctuary. Luna was no longer just her mare, and Samantha felt a deep, painful ache in her chest as she realized that the dream she had when she returned to the farm, a dream of quiet and peace, was slipping further and further from her grasp. She had to find a way to protect Luna, to protect the farm, and to reclaim the life she had lost. The farm had never felt more like a prison than it did now. Samantha couldn't escape the noise. The hum of tourists crowding around the paddocks, the constant phone calls from media outlets, and the unsettling feeling that she was losing control over everything. It wasn't just the fans anymore. There was something darker on the horizon. It started with a small group of visitors who came to the farm one evening under the guise of curiosity about Luna's unusual abilities. They were polite, well-dressed, and asked all the right questions. But there was something off about them, something that made Samantha uneasy the moment they stepped onto her property. They had shown up unannounced, just as the evening light was beginning to fade. Samantha had reluctantly agreed to give them a tour, thinking they were just another group of interested fans. But as she led them toward the paddocks, she noticed the way they looked at Luna, not with admiration, but with something colder, more calculating. The leader of the group, a man with sharp eyes and an even sharper smile, introduced himself as Tom. He was the first to approach Luna, his eyes scanning her every movement with a disconcerting intensity. As he reached out to pet her, the other members of the group hovered around, watching with unnerving attention. The whole scene felt like something out of a nightmare, and Samantha's gut instinct told her that something wasn't right. Is she always this responsive? Tom asked, his voice smooth, almost too smooth. Samantha's eyes narrowed. She's clever, but she's not a circus animal. She's a horse, and I'd appreciate it if you treated her with respect. Tom smiled, but there was a flicker of something dark in his eyes. Of course. I just find it fascinating how she can do what she does. I'm sure there's a lot of training involved. Samantha hesitated, the hairs on the back of her neck prickling. She hadn't told anyone about the lengths Luna had gone to with her escape artist acts. It was supposed to be something private, something special between her and Luna. But these strangers were digging deeper, and Samantha wasn't sure she wanted them to find out more. The others in the group nodded, their gazes fixed on Luna. There was something unsettling about their focus. It wasn't just admiration. It was almost obsession. The whole thing felt off, and Samantha's instincts kicked into overdrive. She quickly ended the tour, saying it was time for the animals to be fed and that they needed to leave. The group reluctantly agreed, but not without a few more lingering glances at Luna. As they made their way back to their car, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The unease that had been creeping in for days now settled heavily in her chest. She couldn't shake the suspicion that these people weren't just interested in Luna's tricks. There was something darker at play, something she couldn't put her finger on, but felt deep in her bones. As soon as they left, Samantha locked up the barn and checked the security cameras around the property. She had installed them a few weeks ago, after noticing an increasing number of strangers wandering too close to the gates. But tonight, as something made her take a closer look, Samantha rewound the footage from the time the group had arrived. At first, everything seemed normal. They parked, got out of the car, and approached the barn. But as the video progressed, she noticed something strange. One of the men in the group, as someone she hadn't really noticed during the tour, had stayed behind. As the others were distracted by Luna, he had slipped into the feed room. Samantha's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen him do it. He must have been quiet, too quiet. It was a deliberate move. She fast-forwarded the footage, watching him carefully. He lingered in the feed room, his hands brushing over the supplies, checking things. His movements slow and deliberate. Samantha froze. He wasn't just looking for something. He was looking for something specific. This wasn't just curiosity. This was something else. She quickly pulled up the footage from the other cameras around the farm, piecing together the moments she had missed. The man had walked through the barn at least 3 times. Each time, he had scanned the room, lingering in places where only staff usually went. He was looking for something, or someone. Samantha's heart pounded in her chest as the realization hit her. This wasn't just an innocent visit. The group wasn't here to see a viral horse. They had been here for something more. Something that made Samantha's skin crawl. She immediately called her mom. Margaret picked up after a few rings, her voice warm but laced with concern. "Mom, I need you to do something for me," Samantha said, her voice tight with urgency. "Check the barn and make sure everything is locked up. Don't leave it open for even a second, okay?" "What's wrong, Sam?" Margaret asked, a note of concern creeping into her voice. "I don't know yet, but I think we have some people here who aren't who they say they are. I'm going to call the police, just to be safe." Margaret didn't hesitate. "I'll check it now. You're right to be worried. Be careful." As Samantha ended the call, she took a deep breath. She couldn't let her guard down. Not anymore. These strangers weren't just interested in Luna's tricks. They were interested in something far more dangerous. The next few hours were a blur. Samantha installed additional security measures, double-checked the barn, and reviewed the footage again. Her mind raced as she tried to piece everything together. It wasn't just the man in the feed room, it was the way the group had watched Luna, the way they had lingered too long, asked too many questions. There was something in their eyes that made Samantha feel like they were planning something that wasn't just a casual visit. When the police arrived, they took her concerns seriously, but there was little they could do without more concrete or evidence. The group had left the property without incident, but Samantha knew they would be back. The unsettling feeling hadn't gone away. If anything, it had only grown stronger. As the night wore on, Samantha stood by the barn, watching the shadows stretch across the land. The farm had never felt more vulnerable. She had to protect Luna and everything she had worked so hard to build. She just didn't know how yet. The night had fallen faster than Samantha anticipated, and with it came a blanket of silence that seemed heavier than usual. The farm, once full of noise and life from the tourists, was now eerily quiet. The last of the visitors had gone home hours ago, and the night was settling in. But something about the stillness felt off. Samantha could feel it in her bones. She tried to shake the feeling, but it lingered, gnawing at her. The power had flickered a few minutes earlier, just enough to make her glance up from the paperwork she was going through. It was nothing unusual. A brief power outage was common in the area, especially during the colder months when storms rolled through. But tonight, the flicker was enough to catch her attention. She glanced at the clock. 10 p.m. Normally she'd be in bed by now, but with everything happening on the farm, sleep had become a rare commodity. She stretched and went to check the barn, locking up for the night. Luna, as usual, was in her stall, but the rest of the horses were already huddled in the far corner, sleeping. Samantha did her rounds, making sure everything was secure, double-checking the locks. The strange feeling of unease didn't leave her. Suddenly the lights in the barn flickered again. Then, all at once, everything went dark. Samantha froze. The sudden silence was profound, amplifying every small sound, the rustle of leaves outside, the faint scurrying of animals in the field. She reached for her phone, but there was no signal, no power. The house was dark, and the barn was quiet, except for the sound of her own breathing. She made her way to the back door, feeling her way in the dark. As she stepped into the barn aisle, she noticed Luna standing at the front of her stall, her body tense. The mare was usually calm in the dark, but at night, she was uneasy, her eyes darting around. Samantha's heart began to pound as the hair on the back of her neck stood up. Something wasn't right. She heard a noise, faint but distinct, coming from the direction of the paddock gate. The sound of footsteps. Someone was out there. Samantha's pulse quickened. She quickly went to the small security room near the barn's entrance, the place where she had set up the cameras. The power was out, but the cameras still had a backup battery. She turned the monitor on, praying that it hadn't gone dark too. A low hum buzzed on the screen as it flickered to life. For a moment, it was just static. Then the image cleared, and Samantha's breath caught in her throat. The screen showed the paddock gate, which had been opened slightly. The dark figure of a man stood in the shadows, creeping forward, his body almost blending with the night. Samantha could barely make out his features, but she didn't need to see them clearly to know that this wasn't a random visitor. This was someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The man was moving with purpose, not the hesitant gait of someone sneaking a peek, but the steady, deliberate step of someone with a goal. He wasn't alone. As the camera zoomed out, another figure appeared, then another. A group of people, strangers, was surrounding the barn. They were blocking the exits, closing in from all sides. Samantha's heart raced. Panic surged through her, but she tried to keep calm. She didn't know who they were or what they wanted, but one thing was certain. The This wasn't a coincidence. These were the same people who had visited the farm a few days earlier. Uh, the ones who had acted so strangely, the ones who had made her feel uneasy. Now they were back, and this time they were not here to take photos or watch Luna perform tricks. They were here for something else. She had to act fast. Samantha's mind raced as she tried to think of what to do. She grabbed her phone, but there was no service. The backup power on the security cameras was still running, but it wouldn't last forever. She couldn't wait for the police to arrive. She needed to protect the animals, especially Luna. The barn was old, and the windows were large enough to give anyone a clear view of the interior, but it also made it harder to hide. Samantha knew she couldn't stay inside. The group was getting closer. They would be at the barn any minute now, and she couldn't afford to let them get to the horses. Her only option was to confront them head-on. Samantha grabbed the flashlight from the shelf, the cold steel of the beam feeling solid in her hands. She could feel her breath come in quick bursts, but she steadied herself, focusing on what needed to be done. She needed to get to Luna. She needed to get the horses out of the barn. She made her way to the barn door, peeking through the cracks. She saw them, the figures creeping around the side, their faces hidden in the shadows. One of them was holding something in his hand, a crowbar maybe. Samantha didn't have time to think. She had to move. She dashed to the paddock, using the darkness to shield her movements. She moved silently, her heart pounding in her ears. As she reached the barn entrance, she quickly swung the door open just enough to slip through, not wanting to alert the strangers. Luna was still standing in her stall, looking anxious but calm enough for the moment. Samantha whispered softly to her, her voice soothing. "It's okay, girl. We're going to get out of here. Just stay calm." Samantha didn't know how many people were out there, but she knew she couldn't waste any time. She quickly unlatched Luna's stall, opening the door and gently leading her out. Luna nickered softly, but she followed without hesitation. The rest of the horses were already moving, sensing the urgency in the air. Samantha gently ushered them toward the back gate. But just as she thought they might be able to escape into the nearby woods, she heard it. The sound of a door slamming open. They were coming. Samantha didn't look back. She urged Luna forward, her legs aching from the tension. They had to make it out of the paddock, out of the barn, and into the cover of the trees. Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind her. "Hey, stop right there!" Samantha turned just in time to see one of the strangers rushing toward her. But before he could reach her, Luna bolted forward, kicking up dust as she galloped through the gate. Samantha held onto the reins, her heart pounding as the sound of pursuit grew louder, and then, to her surprise, the other horses followed. One by one, they charged through the open gate, galloping as fast as they could into the night. Samantha looked back at the barn. The group was closing in, but it was too late. Luna was free, and so were the rest of that horses. She just hoped they could get away before it was too late. But then, as she turned to lead Luna into the woods, she saw something that made her stop dead in her tracks. A flash of light and a familiar face. The rescue had just begun. The first signs of hope came with the phone call. Samantha had barely slept, her eyes bleary from hours of worrying. But when the phone rang at 6 a.m. the next morning, it cut through the haze of exhaustion like a jolt of adrenaline. She didn't even recognize the number, but something in her gut told her it was important. She grabbed the phone off the nightstand, her pulse racing. "Hello," she said, her voice hoarse. "Samantha Ellis?" The voice on the other end was calm, professional. "This is Detective Alvarez from the county sheriff's office. I understand you've had some trouble with your animals." Samantha's heart skipped. Yes, they're gone. The horses. All of them. Luna, too. I don't know where they are. Someone took them last night." The detective's voice softened. "I understand. Don't worry. We've got a team out searching. We've already alerted local animal control, and we're tracking down leads as we speak. But we need to know everything. Who was around the property? Anyone who seemed suspicious?" Samantha took a deep breath. She couldn't think straight, but she had to get the details right. She quickly told Alvarez about the strange group who had visited the farm the previous week, the way they'd acted, the way they'd lingered near the feed room. She told him about the man who'd slipped inside the barn, the way he'd been too interested in the horses, too focused on Luna. Alvarez listened intently. Okay, stay put. I'll have some officers over there soon to take your statement. In the meantime, I suggest you keep an eye out and don't approach anyone you don't know. If they show up again, call us immediately. Samantha hung up, her heart still hammering. The detective had sounded confident, but the sinking feeling in her gut wouldn't go away. How could she just sit and wait? Her mind raced. What if the horses were still out there? Scared, hungry, lost? She couldn't just stay at home and wait. She grabbed her jacket, throwing it over her shoulders, and stepped out the front door. The morning air was cold, the ground slick with dew, but it was the sound of birds chirping and the faint murmur of a distant engine that caught her attention. A drone? Her heart skipped again. She'd seen drones buzzing over the paddocks when the farm had become a media circus, but this wasn't the same. The sound was too low, too controlled. She ran toward the edge of the property, where the pasture met the dense forest, and soon spotted the small drone hovering overhead, its camera aimed at the ground. As she approached, a man in his mid-30s with a scruffy beard and a baseball cap looked up from the drone controller. He quickly shut the device off, as if trying to hide it from her. Samantha froze, her blood running cold. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with suspicion. The man smiled, a thin, nervous grin that only deepened her unease. "I'm sorry, I'm just taking some aerial footage of the area. I've been working with the animal rescue group. It's just gathering intel. They asked me to come out here." Samantha's mind whirled. She knew of no animal rescue group that was associated with the farm, no one who had been out there taking footage. "I don't know who you are, and I don't remember giving anyone permission to film here." The man shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if looking for an excuse to leave. "Right. I'll just be on my way then. I didn't mean to intrude." But before he could take a step, Samantha's phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number, and a wave of dread washed over her as she answered. "Samantha, this is Tom from the Animal Control Agency," a new voice said. "I've got some information that might help. We've been tracking the horses. We've got a lead." Samantha's heart raced. "What do you mean? Where are they? Do you know where they are?" "Hold on. We've been working with a drone pilot who's been following a few leads," Tom explained. "One of our guys got a tip-off from a local farmer. He spotted Luna and the other horses about 40 miles east of here, near an abandoned cattle yard." The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. Luna's alive?" Tom continued. "We've sent a team to investigate the site. We're going to bring in the horses. Don't worry, we're on it. Just sit tight and don't go out there alone." Samantha barely processed the rest of his words as she hung up, her mind still on the fact that Luna was alive, that they had a lead, and that there was still a chance. But then, as she turned to head back to the house, she looked over at the man with the drone. He was no longer standing where she had last seen him. He was gone. A cold chill ran down Samantha's spine. What had he been doing here? Samantha didn't waste any time. She called Detective Alvarez back, giving him the details about the drone pilot, the tip from the farmer, and the fact that she had seen a man on her property who might have been connected to the group that had taken the horses. Alvarez promised to send an officer to investigate the drone footage, but Samantha's mind raced. Why had the man been so evasive? What if he knew something about the group that had taken Luna and the other horses? Samantha's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden beep from her phone. It was an email from an unknown sender, and the subject line made her stomach drop. Video evidence. She opened the email, which contained a link to a video. The footage was shaky, but as it loaded, she saw it. Luna and the other horses, standing in an abandoned yard, surrounded by several men. The figures in the cedar video weren't clear, but one thing was unmistakable. The person who was holding the camera was the same man she had seen earlier that morning, the one who had been flying the drone. Samantha's hand trembled as she clicked on the link. The truth was finally beginning to unfold, but the more she discovered, the more questions she had. Who were these people? And why had they taken the horses? And what were they planning to do with them? Her instincts told her the worst was yet to come. But for now, all she could do was wait and pray that Luna and the others would be safe. The hours that followed felt like days. Samantha sat by the phone, waiting for any sign, any update on the horses. Detective Alvarez had assured her they were on the case, but the silence that followed was deafening. It was early afternoon by the time she received another call, the one she had been waiting for. Her heart leapt as she answered. Samantha Ellis? Yes, this is Samantha. What's the status? Did you find them? She asked, her voice trembling. This is Tom from Animal Control, came the calm voice over the line. We've located the horses. They're alive, but they're in poor condition. We need you to come with us. Samantha's legs felt weak, but she didn't hesitate. Where are they? Are they okay? Is Luna okay? She demanded. 40 miles east of here, just like the tip said. An abandoned cattle yard. We're getting them out now. But Samantha, they're not in good shape. We need you to come. It's going to be a long day. Samantha's mind raced as she grabbed her coat and keys. Luna, her precious Luna, was alive. But that didn't ease the worry in her heart. Poor conditions. The horses were in bad shape. What had those people done to them? The anger rose in her chest, mixing with the fear. They had been taken. Stolen. For what? She couldn't understand it. She sped down the winding roads of Oregon, the landscape flashing by in a blur of green and brown. The thought of Luna, of all the horses, kept her focused, driving faster despite the tightness in her chest. As she pulled up to the scene, the first thing that hit her was the smell. It was faint but unmistakable. The smell of decay, of something long abandoned. She parked and ran toward the group of officers standing near a gate. Tom waved her over, his face serious. They're back there, he said, pointing to a rundown structure barely visible behind a thicket of overgrown trees. We've got animal control working on it now, but we need you to help us identify them. Samantha's throat tightened as she followed Tom toward the area. She could see the makeshift pen, a cramped, muddy enclosure with rusted fencing. It was a far cry from the well-kept pastures back at the farm. She had to hold back a sob as she saw the horses huddled together, their coats matted, their eyes dull and tired. They had clearly been neglected. But there, at the front of the group, was Luna. Samantha stopped dead in her tracks. The sight of her mare, once so full of life, now standing in that grim pen, broke her heart. Luna's once sleek coat was matted with dirt, her ribs visible beneath her fur. Her eyes, usually bright and curious, now looked dull and hollow. She was standing still, head lowered, as if exhausted from both the physical and emotional toll of being kept in this place. Samantha's eyes filled with tears. She took a step forward, her voice breaking as she called out, "Luna! Luna! It's me! I'm here! You're safe now!" At the sound of her voice, Luna's ears flicked back, and for a moment there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She took a slow step toward Samantha, her body trembling, before suddenly breaking into a full gallop toward the fence. It was then that Samantha realized Luna wasn't just walking. She was running. She was charging toward her, the same way she always had when she was excited to see Samantha. Samantha's heart surged as she rushed forward, her hands outstretched, just as Luna reached the fence. Without warning, Luna stopped, her hooves kicking up the dust as she slammed her body against the gate. She nuzzled Samantha's shoulder, her nose damp with sweat. The connection was instant. Luna was home. "Good girl. I'm here. I've got you." Samantha whispered as she wrapped her arms around Luna's neck, holding her tight, her body shaking with relief. The mare nuzzled her shoulder again, as if reassuring her that she was okay. But they both knew it would take time for the physical scars to heal, the exhaustion, the weight, the fear. "We've got to get the others out," Tom said softly, breaking through the emotional moment. They're all in the same condition." Samantha nodded, her mind working to process the reality of it all. These horses, Luna included, had been through hell. They hadn't just been stolen. They had been kept in these horrible conditions, locked away from the world that had once been their home. But now they were here, safe. And with each step Samantha took to get them out of that pen, she felt a little lighter. The rescue team quickly got to work. One by one, the horses were freed from the pen, some more reluctantly than others. The stress and trauma were visible on each of them. The horses were thin, some barely able to stand on their own, their hooves cracked and worn down from walking on rough surfaces. But each time they saw Samantha, each time they heard her voice, there was a flicker of recognition, a small spark of hope. When Luna was safely in the trailer, Samantha stood with her for a moment, her hand resting on the mare's neck. She could feel the warmth of her skin under the thick, dirty coat. She could feel Luna's breath against her cheek, steady and rhythmic, calming her. "You're going to be okay, Luna," Samantha whispered. "We're going to make sure you're safe from now on." One by one, the other horses were loaded into the transport. They were tired, but they would know they were alive. And that was enough for now. Luna stood tall, the first to climb into the trailer. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The drive back to the farm was long and quiet. The rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, as if the earth itself was washing away the dirt and fear. It felt like a cleansing, a release of all the tension and dread that had built up over the past few days. When they finally arrived back at the farm, the horses were unloaded and brought to the barn, where the rescue team began their work. The horses were given food and water, their wounds cleaned and treated. Luna was the first to be checked by the vet. Samantha stayed close, watching as the vet examined the mare, doing what they could to stabilize her and comfort her after the ordeal. Samantha took a deep breath. It wasn't over yet. There was so much work left to be done. But for now, as she stood beside Luna in the barn, she allowed herself a moment of peace. The horses were safe, and that was all that mattered. The days following the rescue were filled with long hours of care, cleaning, and recovery. The horses had been through an ordeal no animal should ever have to endure, and it was going to take time for them to heal, both physically and emotionally. But each day, they grew stronger. They ate well, slept soundly, and began to regain their confidence in the safety of their surroundings. Luna especially seemed to thrive in the familiar space of the barn, her energy slowly returning as the stress of the past week faded away. Samantha stood in the barn one evening, watching Luna graze in the paddock. It was hard to believe how much had changed in such a short time. A week ago, her life had been turned upside down by the sudden influx of attention from the media and the tourists. Luna had been a viral sensation, a symbol of intelligence and charm, but all of that had come at a cost. The price had been high, not just for Luna, but for the other horses too. They had been exposed to stress, fear, and exploitation, all for the sake of entertainment. Now the farm was quiet again. The media frenzy had died down and the tourists had stopped coming. But instead of feeling relief, Samantha felt a sense of loss. The farm had become something she hadn't intended. It had transformed from a peaceful retreat to a spectacle, a place where animals were put on display for the sake of a viral moment. Samantha knew she couldn't go back to that. She couldn't allow the farm to become a place of entertainment for people who only wanted to see Luna perform. And the whole experience had changed her understanding of fame and what it meant to truly protect her animals. And so, she made a decision. The farm would no longer be a place of public tours. The gates would be closed, the cameras turned off. The farm would be a sanctuary, a place for the animals to live in peace, free from the pressures of public attention. Samantha would use the notoriety Luna had gained to educate people about animal welfare, about the responsibilities of caring for animals, and about the importance of protecting their dignity and well-being. With the media attention now behind them, the barn had become a center for animal education. Samantha started offering limited private tours, but they were focused entirely on educating people about the animals, their care, and their natural behavior. The farm would be a place of learning, not a place of spectacle. Luna, who had once been a symbol of viral fame, became a symbol of something much deeper: empathy, connection, and respect for the animals that shared their lives with humans. She was no longer a horse who picked locks for the amusement of others. She was a therapy horse, trained to help children understand empathy and boundaries. Samantha had always known there was something special about Luna, but now she saw it in a different light. Luna's intelligence, her ability to connect with people, was now being used to help children who struggled with social interactions or emotional regulation. The first group of children to visit the farm were from a local school. Samantha watched as Luna gently guided a young girl around the pasture, the child holding onto the reins with a look of quiet wonder. The girl had been shy, withdrawn, but as Luna walked beside her, the transformation was undeniable. The child smiled, spoke to Luna softly, and even laughed when the mare nudged her gently. Luna, in turn, responded with a calm, patient demeanor, making sure to keep the child at ease. It was moments like this that reminded Samantha why she had come to the farm in the first place, not for the fame, not for the viral videos, but to create something meaningful, something that would last. Luna had unlocked something much deeper than her ability to pick locks. She had unlocked a path to healing, to connection, and to understanding. As the weeks passed, the farm's reputation shifted. Instead of being a place where people came for entertainment, it became a place where people came to learn, to grow, and to experience the quiet beauty of the animals. Samantha kept the tours small, personal, and focused on animal welfare. She even started offering programs for children and adults, teaching them about the importance of respecting animals and fostering empathy through interaction. Luna thrived in her new role as a therapy horse. She was patient and kind, always willing to work with the children who needed her most. The other horses, too, began to settle into their new lives, no longer stressed by the constant stream of visitors. They were allowed to live at their own pace, to roam the fields without the looming pressure of being put on display for others. Samantha had found a new kind of peace in this new chapter. She had learned so much about herself, about the importance of boundaries, and about the balance between sharing something special with the world and protecting it. The fame that Luna had once brought them was no longer important. What mattered now was the work they were doing, the connections they were fostering, the lives they were touching. One morning, as the sun began to rise over the hills, Samantha stood at the edge of the pasture, watching Luna lead another child around the field. The mare's coat gleamed in the early light, and Samantha couldn't help but smile. The horses were happy. They were home. And for the first time in a long time, Samantha felt like she had found the life she had always dreamed of. A life of purpose, of meaning, and of quiet fulfillment. In the distance, a small group of visitors was arriving, but this time there was no frenzy. There was no rush to see the famous horse. Instead, they came for the experience, to learn, to observe, and to appreciate the beauty of the animals without the pressure of spectacle. Samantha felt a deep sense of pride. This was the way it was supposed to be. As Luna and the child walked past her, the little girl turned to Samantha with a beaming smile. "She's so gentle," the girl said, her voice full of wonder. "She really listens to me." Samantha smiled back, her heart swelling with gratitude. "She's always listened," she said softly. "She's always known exactly what people need." Luna had unlocked something deeper in all of them, something far more important than a viral video. She had unlocked their hearts. The farm had been given a second chance. And so had Samantha. And that was the kind of fame that would last forever.